is Wednesday, March 27th, 2019. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And my deepest apologies for the wait. I really hate when that happens. Unfortunately, it does occasionally happen. Today it happened. You can thank Walmart. I made the mistake of going over there to pick up something really quick before I came in here, or at least got home from jiu-jitsu, and it's like they picked the guy behind me to take out a line. The person in front of me needed a customer service thing. I started wondering if I was in the customer service line or some shit. I'm like, what the fuck? I had to wait for like 10-15 minutes just to get out of there. I mean, I really thought about abandoning my purchase and just getting the F out. But you know, I patiently waited because you know I'm a stickler when it comes to customer service. Not only receiving but also giving, and it bugs me whenever I'm getting what I would consider inappropriate customer service. Anyway, so yeah, that's why I'm late. Deepest apologies. As far as what we went through in jiu-jitsu today, it was primarily positional sparring. It seemed like I can't really recall any specific technique we were going through except for one, and it was from a position where you've got your opponent in front of you, right? And you want to kind of bullfight through the guard. Well, it was a way to kind of smash to a half guard position. I can remember that one, and also another one where that's what it was. We were all about circumventing the guard today. My apologies. I'm just kind of flustered from Walmart still. But anyway, the other thing we did for that was where you're on your back, your opponent is coming in, and they're actually standing, or actually no, you're sitting upright, and it's one hand on your knee, one hand on your hip, and then just pushing through to a half guard position, a pretty dominant one at that, but a half guard position. And then what was the other one? Oh yeah, and the other one was shooting the leg through. Like, so if you're in a half guard position and you want to get around to the back from there, is you have your leg on the outside and leg on the inside, right? Your leg on the inside is the hook that you're going to assume once you get their back, but you've got the leg on the outside that you're giving a shin shield with. And it's one of those things where you grab on the back of your opponent's gi, or you slip. You slip a underhook in under their arm and shoot the leg through, and then get up on the back, at least in a safety belt position. You know, where you've got the one hook in, and you're ready to go ahead and bring your opponent down, or at least try to from there. And we did a lot of positional sparring today, though, and that one, the one that I liked the most was doing positional sparring from the seated position with the shin shield in. And of course, I didn't get like either one of the sweeps, or not really sweeps, but guard pass techniques that we were actually working on. I take that back. I got one of them, but I did not get the other. And the other one is one I actually use more often, which is weird. But nonetheless, felt a lot of improvement today. There were quite a few of the lower belts in there today, and so most of the people that I rolled with today were of lower belt status. And like I said, I felt a lot of improvement on the mat today. And it's always good to see people growing, you know, because it kind of reaffirms the fact that you can grow too. You know, you're not really stuck at any one spot. You know, you might be temporarily plateaued, but it's basically like the tide has gone out and left your boat high and dry. The tide does still come back in, you know. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down into some music, And we've got the body count, of course. And yeah, I'm feeling it. Bloodlust. First Dance. Here on Coin Metal. And that was 12-Foot Ninja with The Point of View. Yeah, I happened upon 12-Foot Ninja, I think while I was listening to, what do you call that, Pandora. And, they're so good. There's something about their music. It's this, like, really eclectic mix of, I don't, like reggae and like jazz, and I don't know, there's like some, I don't know how to explain their music, really. It's got so many different elements to it. And it's funny because I was talking to one of them, and I'm not sure who, on Twitter, where they had said something in an interview about Meshuggah and how everything like links back to Meshuggah. And I said, oh, you noticed that too, that everything goes back to Meshuggah. And the way they put it seemed to indicate that that basically Meshuggah is like they reset the standard to such an extent that, like, no matter what you do, people will talk about your music in context of, oh yeah, Meshuggah did that. Oh, is Meshuggah a big influence of you guys? It's like, no, I've heard of them, I've listened to them just a teeny tiny bit, but no, they're not a primary influence on us. And I just want to say that 12-Foot Ninja, you guys are so fucking unique that I don't care that there are some quote-unquote gent elements in your music. To me, it's like, it's not the point. It's like, there are more than enough bands out there, and it's to their detriment, I might add, that just copy what other people do. And while I'm sure that influence and, oh hey, these guys did it this way, might be something that comes into your creative process or whatever, but I never get the impression when I'm listening to your music that, oh yeah, oh look, they took that cut or that hook from Meshuggah, or they're using the same tone as Meshuggah, or they're using the same strings or the same. No, I don't. It never even fucking occurs to me. It's like, when I'm listening to your music, nothing that you do reminds me of Meshuggah. I mean, really. I don't know. I guess I'm kind of silly like that. It's I think that it is impossible to be human and not receive influence from other humans. We're a social creature, and we exchange symbols and meanings and different expressions amongst one another so much, and the associative process works in such a way that you don't even need linear connections between things in order to come up with something entirely unique onto its own. And that's really where I think that 12-Foot Ninja fits in. Is like, so what? There's a whole bunch of different influences out of there, and there's all kinds of people that have done similar things before, but the way that it's put together and the total presentation is completely unique. It's like, you can mix flour and water and eggs together several different ways and produce several different things. And that's kind of the way I look at metal. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into some crypto stuff. And I almost left this one alone because this was actually something that I had intended to get into on Monday, but for some reason we just never got around to. And I find it really hilarious because I was actually alive during this guy's last fuck up. And just to give you a little perspective, okay, these guys in Enron, they had like their stock was in everybody's 401k plan. Everybody had fucking Enron stock. And it was valued very, very highly for a long time. Unfortunately, it was valued very highly based on fraud. And one of the architects of that fraud just got out of prison. And of course, one of the first places he looks, cryptocurrencies. Hey, we're forgiving a bad behavior, aren't we? No, not really. And I think this is going to be one of those tests of cryptocurrency, really, is this guy coming into it. Jeffrey Skilling. Some people out there in the crypto space may not recognize this man's name, but let me tell you something. Look him up. There's all kinds of information about Mr. Skilling and his deeds at Enron. You know, that instance in and of itself, I mean, if you're involved in cryptocurrencies at all because of like trust reasons, you know, the fact that you don't actually need to trust people in order to use it. You know, when you're doing a transaction from you to somebody else, there's no third party involved, unless of course you've involved one. You know, like if you're using a custodial wallet of some sort, now you've introduced a third party. If you're using it for off-chain transactions, now you've introduced a third party. So anyway, there's a reason why Bitcoin works the way it does. And it is exactly because of the existence of assholes like Jeffrey Skilling, who had all the trust in the world placed in them and abused that trust to the fucking hilt, and then some. They took that one all the way through to the pommel. And it disturbs me, really, that this guy is allowed to see the light of day, given the millions of people who his duplicity and treachery fucked over royally. I mean, people lost their homes over this shit. They thought they were set, and they put all that trust in this guy, and then it comes out that no, they've been cooking the books for months, if not years, and no, they're not really worth the billions and billions of dollars worth of trust that everybody put in them, and so you get to take a bath. Of course, you weren't warned about that until every bank and every legacy entity in the world fucking knew about it and had a chance to walk away with whatever profit they could. But you were the last to know. And it was when your stockbroker, who also managed to make a profit on your loss, probably with your money, called you up and said, oh, by the way, we're wrecked. Sorry about that. Talk to you on Monday. And the sad part about it is, for the most part, you just had to take it in the ass. Sure, there were class action lawsuits, but nobody was made whole. Except, of course, the Enron executives. They were able to get out ahead of everybody else. Because they got the connections at the SEC, and they said amongst one another, hey, you know, my buddy at the SEC says they're starting to investigate us. We might want to liquidate our positions in Enron and look for somewhere else to put our money, because it's going to get hairy. You know, and like I said, they had all the opportunity in the world to bail. You know, it's like all the gossip that you find on crypto Twitter. Only crypto Twitter didn't exist at the time. So when an exchange started fucking up or something like that, you didn't know about it until, you know, you lost all your money. Because your broker knew about it, and your broker's employer knew about it. And the regulator entities that issued the cease and desist orders knew about it. But you were last to find out. So anyway, I got this article here. It's on CoinDesk.com. ex-Enron CEO leaves jail to plot possible blockchain venture report. This is by Daniel Palmer, issued March 25th, 2019 at 12:35 UTC. So yes, penis. The former CEO of Enron, Jeffrey Skilling, is reportedly looking to start a blockchain company just a month after being freed from jail for his role in the energy giant's massive accounting scandal back in 2001. According to a Wall Street Journal article on Monday, citing sources, quote, familiar with the matter, Skilling may be planning a digital platform relating to investment in the oil and gas industry. Oh my God. They added that he has recently met former Enron execs as well as specialists in cryptocurrency, blockchain, and software development regarding the project. In today's article, WSJ sources also say that Lou L. Pai, former chief executive of Enron Energy Services, has said he will back the new platform. The WSJ said it reached out for comment, but that neither Skilling nor Pai responded. On February 21st, Skilling was freed after serving 12 years in prison for masterminding Enron's efforts to carry out one of the biggest corporate frauds in U.S. history. Originally sentenced to 24 years and fined $45 million in 2006 after being indicted on 35 counts of fraud, insider trading, and other crimes, Skilling's sentence was later reduced to 14 years by a U.S. district judge. He maintained his innocence throughout, according to reports. Yeah. So there you go. Jeffrey Skilling, creeping into crypto. And I can guarantee in another maybe 6 months to 2 years. That's what I give it. He's got about an 18-month window starting 6 months from now, starting 6 months from whenever project he's involved in gets off the ground. You know, when they start getting customers and they're open to the public or whatever their customer group is, their demographic. Then yeah, 6 months from then to 2 years, this man will be indicted or issued some sort of cease and desist order, or I don't know, somebody will get wrecked and somebody will shoot him, or I don't know, something like that. But I don't see a good thing ahead for Mr. Skilling, because unlike when Enron was bubbling about, I mean, could you imagine all of the transactions that Enron does on a public blockchain that you can go back and check and verify against the claims that they're making every quarter? Now, you know, they only actually do about $24 million worth of business in one quarter, and they're reporting that they did, you know, $100 million. You'd be like, no, and you would know immediately there's an asymmetry going on here between what they're reporting and reality, and so I best move my money elsewhere. And there ain't going to be none of that waiting for the fucking SEC or the CFTC or FDIC or any of these other organizations issuing a subpoena or a cease and desist order or a warning or any of that other bullshit. No. It'll be you're reading the direct feed and you're like, yeah, this guy's full of shit. But, you know, it's astounding to me that people don't put it in the context with regard to cryptocurrencies. They don't put it into that kind of context. They don't tell you things like, yes, you can check the transaction on the blockchain. They don't put it to you like that. They put it to you like, you know, oh, you can do this with this software and you can do that with this software and so on and so forth. What they don't tell you, of course, is that you can't really do that in your jurisdiction because it falls in line with several regulatory frameworks already set up. and I know that there's like this illusion that several governments aren't getting together and trying to kind of collude together on how to regulate things, and are comparing notes on how their various efforts have been successful or non-successful. And so it's not a matter of you're going to be able to escape it by moving to another jurisdiction or some shit like that. And that is why I say all of this effort to off-chain bullshit, off-chain your transactions, forget about it. Just forget about it. That whole fucking area of trust and third-party brokers that is already covered. There are already laws. You do not need to hold on to people's money in order to facilitate their transaction for them or give them a place to spend their money. You don't need to. And if that's all you're doing, there really isn't much in the way of regulatory burden that can be placed on you. And there are other ways to change your transaction strata so that it is not such that it falls within a regulatory category. And that's another thing that's just completely missed in all of this, is that there are people right now that are providing goods and services in exchange for cryptocurrency as money, not specifically Bitcoin or not solely Bitcoin, but that they are doing these transactions every day, and they have been since 2011, 2012. Ever since the capability has been available to them and there was a price for Bitcoin in US dollars or other fiat currencies, it has been going on. And I believe in the longer term, that is the way that cryptocurrencies will ultimately be used. I know there's like this big drive to push it to where cryptocurrencies are used as some sort of backbone for some representative token bullshit token that you use as money instead. And that's why you hear people talk about, oh, Bitcoin's not money, or Bitcoin's money, use of as Bitcoin as money is like the least interesting thing about it. Bullshit. The use of Bitcoin as money is what allows you to avoid having to interact with entities like Enron or Goldman Sachs or Wells Fargo or any of these people at all in your commerce. That has not been done since we started into this digital era. That has not been a possibility. Now, all of the transactions that have been going on that have been quote unquote illicit on say the Visa network and whatnot, they've all been cloaked in various ways on the retailer's side and the buyer's side, so as to conceal what they're doing from regulators. And that's all well and good, but their activity could still be deemed as a criminal activity, and if it were ever found out, of course, they could get busted for it. What I'm talking about is transactions and commerce that are outside of the regulatory bound, because it's happening between you and another entity, and you two are determining all of the terms of the commerce between you. You are determining the exchange rate that both of you are willing to work with. You are determining exactly what currency you want to use. And you're both determining how you want to use those cryptocurrencies. That's a power that we have not had for a very, very long time. You know, going on at least a century or so, where we've had the opportunity to select from a variety of currencies that we could commerce in, or perform commerce in, transact in. You know, that's an expression of popularity, or i.e. an aspect of value behind a currency. If your participation in using it is compulsory, then this expression of confidence is much less felt. It's like just assumed that you're going to do business in US dollars and you don't really have a choice in the matter. When you go down to the store, whatever grocery store, whatever, and you're doing business with them, you are most likely restricted solely to the fiat currency of your nation or state or whatever the delineating factor is. And it used to be that those were the only ones that you could actually trust to use as money, at least digitally. But that's no longer the case. In reality, all commerce is voluntary. However, the number of options that you've had available to you has been winnowed down to a singular with regard to what currency you're going to utilize in your commerce in your everyday life for most people. And that's what cryptocurrencies are here to change. Because if you could say do your transactions in Dogecoin, you would be placing the values behind Doge over every other currency out there. Several cryptocurrencies and several fiat currencies alike. where you would be saying to all of these people, it is better for me to use Doge in this transaction than it is any other currency. And the person you're doing commerce is saying, I am willing to accept Doge as money. When you consider it in terms of what commerce you've been able to do with, say, the US dollars and the limitations that have been put on you because of that, it becomes a lot different picture. It's not something as black and white as, there's one exchange rate to go by. No. Because it's a varying amount of work and effort to acquire varying cryptocurrencies, there's going to be a different exchange rate for each of them. And I think when we come down to the reality of it, that we're going to start looking at things as in terms of expenditure of energy, rather than according to national values or solely those aspects, or whatever treaties or whatever your country engages in. Those will be completely derailed from the currency itself. What will really count is how much energy or what the cost of the energy was to mine the currency and to make the car or the doorknob or the computer or your cell phone. There's an amount of energy that goes into doing that. When you count things like mining the ores to make the CPUs or the GPUs or the circuit boards or whatever in your cell phone. There's an effort involved there. There's energy expended there. There's a cost to the ecology and the biology of the area where you've performed this mining activity. Now, when you count those as part of the cost of the unit and you price it in deterministic fashion against cryptocurrencies, all of a sudden it makes it much easier to see how they can be used in a truer form than any other money than we have ever experienced in our lives. And it's not dependent upon a nation state or a god or your governor or your next door neighbor how to price it. And that, again, that's something that we've never had. You know how much effort it was for you to get your ass up in the morning, go to work, and work 12 hours in a fab in a bunny suit. You know how much effort went into it for you to perform that activity. And so with that knowledge, and say you're mining at home, and you know how much effort and how much electricity you are burning in mining, Verge or Dogecoin or anything else out there, Bitcoin, it's a little easier for you to determine what exchange rate that you're willing to go by. When you're looking at the price of something and you're negotiating with somebody that you're trying to do business with, you could be saying to them, hey man, it took me 14 hours to finally get a block on this cryptocurrency, and so no, this price is too low. This doesn't work for me. What can we do here? Bring that up a little bit. I'm willing to accept, 0.5 Monero for that. Because it took me so long to mine a block of Monero, and it cost me so much in electricity, and it took up so much in bandwidth, and I had to put up with that fucking noisy fan, and I had to roast with the thing in my bedroom. Can you see how that's much different than you getting up every morning, working at an hourly rate, a fixed hourly rate? Doesn't matter how hard you bust your ass. It doesn't matter if you're doing the work of 3 people, and while the other 2 people are sitting on their ass. None of that matters. You get $15 an hour or $20 an hour, whatever, but that's something that you agreed to. Now, what if your effort were priced more according to the output and the success rate of the product that you were producing? That would change the merit of working a great deal. I can think of when I was working at the fab, every single thing that happened in that fab was tracked via transactions on their HiSim or various other database systems that they had there on site. And they could determine from South Korea which area of the fab was just dragging ass. They're just barely doing their job. Their productive rate is really low. They're getting through a minimal amount of product, and maybe 2 people on their shift or in their area are actually working worth the shit. They know that. They can tell by looking at the HiSim and their other databases. So now, why can't they be pricing my effort? If I'm busting my ass really, really hard at one place and I'm not getting paid worth of shit any different than everybody else around me, or worse yet, I find out they're getting paid more than me, and I'm busting my ass twice as hard as they are, I'm not going to be working there very much longer. I'm going to start looking around for somewhere else. Somewhere that's willing to give me a better exchange rate on my life. Because that's what's going on there. I'm exchanging time of my life for money. Again, it's a lot easier to place the quality, a quality value on somebody as far as how good an asset they are to your company, when you know the differential between their output and everybody else's output. See, when I was working at Hyundai, I know that they had all this knowledge, and they still brought me in there and fucking fired me for some stupid bullshit that they really shouldn't have fired me for. But nonetheless, man, I saved that place so much fucking money. I was down in the test area. I found a misalignment in one of our probers that had been running for about 72 hours. So it mismarked about, rough estimate, about 40,000 die. It set 40,000 die at $8 a piece. So that's $320,000 plus all the wasted process time, right? That was going to get scrapped. We ended up reprocessing all of it, and it was 92% yield wafers. So, that's something that when they were evaluating whether or not they wanted to fire me, they probably should have been paying attention to that, because that error got missed by 3 other shifts worth of fucking people. Now, of course, I knew that I wouldn't be there very much longer after that, because all of a sudden I started getting blamed for a bunch of shit that I didn't do. And so again, that's like one of those things that if you're using this technology to its maximum capabilities for you and enhancing your efficiency and whatnot, all of the tools are available for it. But it also means that no, you cannot hire your worthless fucking niece to sit around on her ass while everybody else is running around fucking asses and elbows and keep her there. No, that's gone. She has to actually compete on an even keel with everybody else. And so either A, we're going to put her in a fucking department where she can actually do her work and keep up with everybody around her, or B, we're going to show her the fucking door, because that's where she needs to be. She needs to go find somewhere else to work if she can't do the work here as well as everybody else, or as well as we need her to. And again, that's a way that we can be using these technologies to our advantage, where a lot of people aren't looking to do that. You know, they want to create third parties in there that they can stuff in there and lie to it. And keep their worthless fucking niece around. And see, that's what disappoints me about cryptocurrencies and the internet age in general. You know? It's like this Smollett thing. That's complete fucking abridgment of justice here. That my next door neighbor, if my next door neighbor pulled that same shit, just reverse the races and all that other stuff because the guy's white. But if my next door neighbor pulled that stuff, he'd be in federal pound me in the ass prison over the FBI investigation involved for 15 fucking years. But not Smollett. Nope. Charges dropped. Give me a fucking break. You know, those are the values, or those are the events that are just the perception of value on things like currency. I mean, really, if we were in a fully free economy where you could be using any currency you wanted, wouldn't you be tempted to kind of protest the currency that allowed that to happen? That allowed that miscarriage of justice to happen. Fuck, if I could spend my Dogecoin as well as I could spend anything else, I'd liquidate my US dollars, I'd buy all fucking Dogecoin, because I know the Doge people wouldn't let that shit happen. Or better yet, I would go with BSV, because they're all about with litigation and shit, even if most of it's against Craig. But nonetheless, you know, they're all about seeking redress and whatnot. Hey, let's utilize them for what they're for. Fucking, I don't know, that whole Smollett thing, it's just, it makes me think there's something so much bigger going on in the fucking media, and the reason they dressed it up and so much bigger happening in the world, rather, that they're just not reporting it. You know, they got to fill the time slot with something, and so they put this jackass in there, and that it's basically an extension of Hollywood. But I don't know, that's just my take on it. It just doesn't seem to be very worthwhile. You know, there's not going to be a satisfaction associated with this one. At least not with me anyway. Let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. And I got some Sixth going on in the background, and I really like Sixth. But we already played them, so we got to move on. And with that, I guess, Anthrax, Time, here on Coin Metal. And that was Clutch with Escape from the Prison Planet. Man, I should have let that one play. I really like this song. Anywho, I want to dive a little deeper into this skilling thing, because honestly I feel like letting this guy into crypto, or this guy involving himself in cryptocurrencies, is probably not a good thing for anybody. But that's just my opinion. You know, this guy has a track record of being fraudulent, but really what's interesting to me is this, that the guy has this reputation, and the the breach of trust that he was at the center of more or less was a catalyst for the creation of tools such as Bitcoin, because they allow us to divest ourselves entirely from this interest pool, where you have entities such as Enron that were a bunch of fucking numbers and a bunch of bullshit. So anyway, I got this article here on FT Alphaville, FT.com. Let's see, FTAlphaville.ft.com. My apologies, I didn't write it. Enron's Jeff Skilling out of jail and on the crypto trail. This is by Jamina Kelly, so I'm going to say no penis. Authored March 25th, 2019. It takes a certain kind of person to open their arms to a man who's just spent more than 12 years in U.S. federal prison, having been convicted of securities fraud, conspiracy, insider trading, and making false statements. But according to the Wall Street Journal, who cite, quote, people familiar with the matter, former Enron CEO Jeffrey Skilling has not only been holding meetings with former senior colleagues at the collapsed energy company, but also, quote, others who garner support for a new business venture, a, quote, digital platform connecting investors to oil and gas projects. So what kind of others might be prepared to go into business with a man who was embroiled in the mother of all corporate scandals, bringing down an accounting firm in the process, and who only got out of prison last month? According to the Journal, quote, Mr. Skilling has met with individuals who specialize in cryptocurrency, blockchain, and software development in recent weeks. Must be unsure. The Journal also quotes a professor at Wayne State University Law School who suggests that Cryptoland might provide an ideal second chance for someone like Skilling. Quote, it's an area without a long memory, he said. In the cryptocurrency space, no one is going to care too much about Enron. That's bullshit. And why should they? The entire economy is Fire Festival anyway. Not really. Yeah. So there you have it. That's FT, I guess. FT, Financial Times, Alphaville. So there's a little better suggestion, I guess, to exactly what the fuck it's... I'm trying to find out the entity that he's involving himself with. I mean, I'm almost willing to bet it's probably like Blockstream or fucking Lightning or some shit like that. Lightning Labs. I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see how that one plays out. Honestly, I don't think that this man should be involved in anything that's based at least partially on IOUs and or fractional reserves or, some such. Or any kind of trust, really. Sorry, I had to rehydrate there. So the next one I got here is on dealbreaker.com. Hopefully this one gives us a little allusion, at least, into what exactly this man is involving himself into. Jeffrey Skilling is out of prison and into crypto because free will is a fallacy. The ex-CEO of Enron is shockingly intrigued by a market in which pump and dumps are fine and normal. Actually, they're not. And this is by Thornton McHenry. My apologies. This is authored March 25th, 2019. Sometimes we read a paragraph that just glows up at us from the page or screen like it was composed by some kind of mythical muse. A piece of real truth that is also somehow perfectly structured as self-satire. Take, for instance, this flawless moment from WSJ in a story about disgraced former Enron CEO Jeffrey Skilling getting out of prison after a dozen years or so and already looking to start a new business. Quote, "The exact nature of the project is something of a mystery, with the people briefed saying it was at an early stage. Some of those who have met with Mr. Skilling have signed non-disclosure agreements," the people said. Several described it as a digital platform connecting investors to oil and gas projects. Mr. Skilling has met with individuals who specialize in cryptocurrency, blockchain, and software development in recent weeks. Yeah, we got all that. Oh God, that's good. The architect of a $74 billion fraud that shook the foundations of the economy at large and became the poster boy of American avarice pre-2008 edition, and is banned for life by the SEC from ever serving as a director or executive at a public company, is reportedly intrigued by crypto. Because, of course he is. We don't even need to say the obvious here, because the WSJ got a guy to do it for us. Quote, Peter Henning, a professor at Wayne State University Law School who earlier served as a prosecutor at U.S. Department of Justice, said Mr. Skilling's energy enterprise could appeal to investors so long as the business venture doesn't violate the terms of his SEC judgment. He added that focusing on newer investment platforms such as cryptocurrency could prove ideal for a second start. Yeah, no. The last line on this is, "We cannot stop smirking." Yeah. I think this is going to be an adventure. Not just for Mr. Skilling. I think the thing that really bugs me about all this is the association with physical commodities such as oil and or gold or some other such, or gas or energy commodities, hard commodities such as oil and so on. I've said this a million times, but you cannot associate a cryptocurrency with a physical good or commodity. You just can't. Unless you're doing it in the way that I suggested earlier, where you're calculating in every iota of cost involved in the yielding in the acquiring of that oil or other commodity. It's completely worthless unless you're calculating in everything. It's a completely useless tool. And I think the bigger problem here that we're going to see is that there's been a great deal of sale of illicit oil and other commodities. I'm sure some of you are oriented with blood diamonds and blood rare earth minerals such as lithium and palladium and so on and so forth. When you consider trying to associate these commodities with a blockchain, one of the things that becomes immediately apparent is the lading for this commodity. And I don't think that the people that are talking this up are really calculating that in. Because even in cases where you're spoofing transactions and rewriting your blockchain and whatnot, there will be discrepancies. There will be differentials that are notable. There's a reason why cryptocurrencies work the way they do. And even if you do have all the nodes on your network and your blockchain is working according to the spec that you're setting it to, and you're maybe running multiple copies of your blockchain so you can just edit and replace as you see fit, none of that matters. If anybody else has any kind of contact with your blockchain and they're able to view it, just view it. They will be able to do things like maybe screen captures where they bring up the transaction on their monitor, and they do a screen capture of it and copy that and save that to their files, their personal files. They will have documentation of the transaction as it happened. And you will be caught in the fraud that you've tried to commit against them. No matter, again, if you can go back and edit your blockchain and factor it all out and twist it all around the way you want, if people are smart about the way they're doing their transactions and are actually, documenting all of them, they will have record of them. And if their record conflicts with yours, it's going to fall on you to prove whether or not you were lying. Because they'll have an article of an event that happened in real time that you cannot account for. And again, if you can't account for it, it's obvious then that you are lying. See, this is where it becomes dangerous, flinging that word blockchain around, because it neutralizes. There's no difference when you're just using the word blockchain. I don't know what fucking blockchain you're talking about. For all I know, you're talking about some Microsoft Azure project or some fucking IBM, cloud cluster project or some shit like that. I don't know. Are you talking about the Bitcoin blockchain? Are you talking about doing some sort of side chain like the Liquid side chain? What blockchain are you talking about here? I've had a few visions of how that could actually play out, and all of them involve trust that we don't actually need, and we operate completely without, and have been for quite a while now. And so, the idea of trying to reintroduce entities like Mr. Skilling and positions for them or his ilk in this space, it's complete lunacy as far as I'm concerned. Not only is it not efficient because you don't need it. I mean, it's like, why introduce a cost that you don't need? You don't need it. There are all the reporting mechanisms already out there in the public on blockchains. I mean, this is the one place where I would agree with BSV, with their idea of using cryptocurrencies. But the fact of the matter is that you can do this with any cryptocurrency. You don't need to do it with BSV. So that's the one place I would disagree with them. But their conception of using Bitcoin or a live cryptocurrency's blockchain as a means of recording various items, it's not new, but it is more according to the alignment of the original idea of Bitcoin. That you could do a transaction on the public blockchain and nobody knows what the fuck it is. You can completely spoof your identity, and it is in your best interest to do so. And exactly for the reason that I just said, so that people don't know exactly who you are and what exactly the transaction entails. Because it's really none of their business, number one. But it's for your safety, number two. And this is again why the introduction of concepts like AML KYC in the crypto space, complete fucking lunacy. All it does is endanger you and your funds and your commerce. In the longer term, we are going to find that out. We've seen things like CoinHive come and go, although I'm sure we will see another iteration of CoinHive yet again. I like to think of these projects and these ideas as like public tests for concepts, that they intend to implement later on. Not necessarily the iteration that's publicly introduced, but something that operates like it. I've talked a lot about lightning in that context too. That It could be that this is the way it's going to work, but not likely. See, in the longer term, I think all that's really going on with regard to Lightning and all the off-chain transacting and all that bullshit, all I think that's really going on is these people are doing beta tests of their software. They're trying to find out exactly how it works in the wild, and they're going to find out that it's nothing sauce right now for somebody to be an adversary on the Lightning Network. The maximum viable capacity, I think, is like half a Bitcoin or something like that, where you can reliably expect to extract that. And maybe at some point half a Bitcoin will be worth enough that it'll make it worth it to try and hack it. But I think what is more likely to happen is that we're going to see like MasterCard or another such entity pop up, be all confident in the fact they got their proprietary element in their transactions, and they're going to be able to tell them from all the adversaries that are out there and all the unlicensed nodes that are out there, and they're just going to route their transactions and everything's going to be fine. Well, I would say that's not exactly going to be the case. That when it becomes obvious how much money is associated with a specific transaction on the blockchain, there's going to be that much more desire to try and hack those funds. You know, and this whole association of anyone can spend with SegWit, that's going to become really, really valuable to somebody. Extracting funds out of nodes that are live. And it's going to happen. I'm very, very positive it will. And that it'll be also in association with the introduction of a counterfeit coin, or a coin that is assumed to have some real world value that doesn't have that real world value. And that'll be the GR Bufu. Great Ripple Buttfuck. I've mentioned it a few times on this show over the years, but it was an idea that I got when I was reading the, I guess it was the white paper for Ripple, when they were first coming out in like 2014, 2015, when they were making their big splash. And they still can't figure out whether or not they're a cryptocurrency like supporting company, or a company that does sales for services that could be performed on the Ripple, on Ripple or with Ripple. They still haven't made that discernment, because then it could change whether or not they're actually issuing securities, which they pretty much are functionally. And you know, it's funny is that's actually the reason why they've been talking about regulating things that are analogs in function. You know, they're not relying on the developers to be transparent about exactly what their stuff does if it violates several securities laws. And so now they're saying things to the effect of, you know, if it operates similarly to this, if it performs the same functions as this, we're going to regulate it as this. And so, you know, that's one of the reasons why to stick with on-chain transactions and Bitcoin as money as it was originally intended, is peer-to-peer cash. Because in that context, it's completely outside all of these legal frameworks that I keep mentioning on this show. And it's the same thing with every other cryptocurrency out there. As long as you're using them specifically as money, as a monetary vehicle, separate and outside of the fiat currency system, you're completely outside of all of the regulatory frameworks they have. There are other regulatory frameworks that fit in on both the retailer and the customer side. But those are put into a context for you to determine how exactly you want to fulfill your obligation as you see fit. It's no longer a compulsory act in the mere act of transacting, of extracting some sort of taxation from you. If your retailer doesn't charge sales tax on your transactions, that's nobody's business. If they're not paying like some sort of excise tax or VAT tax or some other bullshit tax before they've even made money on the product that they're selling, that's none of your concern. It's none of your knowledge and none of your concern. And that's the way that cryptocurrencies change digital commerce, that I think a lot of these projects that are trying to create third-party entities that can be occupied by people like Mr. Skilling, what the big push is by them to get you trading in IOUs and other representations of value, not actual representations of value themselves, or abstractions of value as I talk about them on this show. Bitcoin is an abstraction of value. It's got certain things that determine the value behind it that are a little unconventional in terms of money and currency according to how we've known them before. And that distinction is where the difference really is. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. I got some prong playing in the background. I'm really digging on it. But we've already played prong, and we don't want to go backwards. We want to go forward. And so, here it is. The Blister Exists by Slipknot, here on Coin Metal. And that was Lamb of God with Erase This. Yeah, as far as Jeffrey Skilling and how we expect him to actually perform in cryptocurrencies, I don't know. I think that he's going to have his opportunity, and he's either going to make good or he's going to burn a lot of people again. And when he does, this time we'll actually have real-time records of it. You know, you can try and hide the facts with regard to cryptocurrency, but again, if there's anybody else sharing the records, you can forget about it. If there's anybody that's dependent on those records, you can forget about it. Because they're going to be using those like nervous-ending stimuli, or nerve-ending stimuli rather, and they're going to respond to it as such. And when it when it's not actually matching the rest of the stimuli that they're receiving, they're going to be up your ass with both hands. So we have this tool of accounting that has never been available before, and I don't think that many people who are talking about using like the Bitcoin blockchain for their activities, that they currently experience a lot of flexibility with regard to actual supply and actual demand and all that, and they've grown quite dependent on that flexibility. And so when they're talking about bringing quote unquote blockchain into their business, I don't really think they're thinking about it in terms of the reality that while you can currently lie to your database and all that other stuff in various ways, and you can, you won't be able to in the future, because all that shit will be on a blockchain, quote unquote, in which case the data on that blockchain will be readable. And if it is readable, somebody who wants to find out what it says, other than the people that you intend to tell it to, will figure it out. And the higher the incentive to figure it out, the more people are going to be working on trying to figure it out. And it is with that I'd like to close out this episode. Thank you again for listening. I certainly do appreciate the support. You can find me on Twitter, also on Facebook under Frank Dashwood. You You can always also look me up on Google. Just hashtag Coin Metal. You'll find it everywhere. But we will be back again on Friday. So until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. And as far as The Last Dance is concerned, this is how I feel Jeffrey Skilling's participation in crypto is actually going to turn out. And so here it is, Killing Joke, Asteroid, Last Dance, here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and you all have an excellent evening. Good night.